What is up, everyone? And welcome back to the Ratchet Motors YouTube channel. So on this one, we're getting the bug back on the road. Now, if you didn't see our last video, I'll put the link up above. But when we moved out here to Missouri, in the process of loading and unloading on the trailers, somewhere along the way, we sprung a coolant leak. Now, I don't think it's anything really serious here. It's either something got wiggled loose or the AN lines that we run under the car have now somehow been ruptured or burst. So if you're not familiar, what we have here is a 1973 Super Beetle with a 2008-ish WRX motor, which means we now are water cooled. Rather than having an air cooled 4-cylinder, now we have a water cooled, turbocharged, fuel injected 4-cylinder. So what I'll show, and I'll show this in some of the previous videos, I'll put some random links up above, but essentially we have a radiator up front with AN lines, I think -16 AN lines running from the radiator to the back to the motor there. So I believe one of those lines may have gotten punctured or damaged. I'm not really sure. I haven't done any work yet checking into things. So we're going to get it up on the jack stands. We're going to investigate, probably just for now, fix things as is. And then in a couple months when it gets to the winter, I'm going to really think about how I'm running those coolant lines. Kind of hang low under the car. They're kind of risky. So whether we do hard lines instead, or maybe you run them right through the cab, I wanted everyone's opinion on that. Maybe another way to run the lines. Once you've seen how I run them, if you haven't seen our previous video, let me know what you guys think. Maybe there's a better way to be doing things here. I kind of just did what was simplest to get the car running, and maybe that's not what the best for long term. Nonetheless, though, I'm going to get it up on the jack stands. We're going to investigate first. I haven't ordered any new parts yet because I'm really hoping that maybe something wiggled loose. Not very likely. But those AN lines are pretty expensive, and it's like a 10-foot, 15-foot span. So we're going to check first before we order any of those new parts there. So go ahead, we're going to dive in. One other thing I've actually been trying, I need to check, is my front suspension. And this could have been entirely my fault, but it actually looks like I may have made the left side here lower than the right side. So something else I'm going to check and measure, because the way the car sits is actually a little bit tighter. Now, the car, before I bought it, did have some front-end damage. I'm not sure if everything's perfectly straight, but it does look like there's some slight difference in height from left to right. So I'm going to check the length. I have those top-line suspension, which is adjustable height, so I'm not sure. Could have been a mistake on my part. It happens all the time. But I may actually have different height settings on the left and right, maybe off by a ½ inch or so. All right, so we got everything jacked up here. So the next step's really going to be getting underneath and checking the coolant lines, see if I can find an obvious split in them, or if it is going to be, actually I'm going to first check all the connections and make sure something isn't obviously loose while I check the hose as well. So I'm actually going to start up in the front here. I can show everyone. I'm going to change the camera just to make it a little easier to see. Up in the front here, we do have a little shroud that I'm going to remove for the radiator. And first I'll check to make sure none of those connections are obviously loose or damaged. And then from there, I'll go ahead and kind of check things piecemeal. But there is a couple Allen bolts I need to take out to get this shroud out of the way. And then we'll start digging in. All right, so this is what the inside of the bug trunk looks like if you haven't seen it before. And you can see we have our radiator fitted up in here. And our own little homemade shroud. And I was referring to actually removing this so that we could see if all the connections are fitted, all the fittings are tight. Don't even need to do that. I did some quick looking around here on my own. I'm going to try to show this. Now, it is a little tight, a little crowded in here. Still kind of making room for our shop. But it's pretty obvious what went wrong here. And it is a damaged line. So if I get under, we can see here. Let me just change this a little bit. Let's see. There we are. You'll notice right. Let me see if I can help clarify right there. It's a little hard to catch, but you can see here, the line was actually damaged, and there's even a little puddle on the ground where the coolant's been dripping there. So plain as day, there's a hole punched right in that line. It's a little hard to see. Let me just real quick here. Ugh. Let's see. So yeah, exactly. Plain as day, there's a hole in that line there. Looks like this bent up, punctured it. So my goal is I was going to replace the lines all together, looking a little bit closer, and rather than spending like $300 on more 16AN line, I'm gonna put a new union in that location. So I'm gonna just cut the line where it is. I'm gonna replace it with 2 female fittings and a male-male union between them, just to make it a little bit easier on myself. So I do gotta check. I got enough for both to be fixed. I don't actually think that the second line or the rear line is as damaged, but I'm gonna check that and just make sure, because there are 2 lines here. It's a little hard to tell. There's actually a second line behind this one. So yeah, rather than replacing the whole line from start to finish, we're just gonna cut it, add in 2 new fittings, and kind of fit it back together. So that should be actually pretty straightforward. So while I wait for that, I'm gonna try to get all my other parts out from the move now. I'm still unpacking everything since we moved here from North Carolina. So I'm either gonna try to unpack some bug parts that I've been looking to put on, like my accelerator pedal, my boost controller. If not, if I can't find those pretty easily, then I'm gonna get back into the truck and start mounting that seat in there. So we'll be back in a few minutes once I figure out what parts I can locate. All right, so it's not the best conditions, but I get you guys sit up here. And all I'm gonna do to start, I'm still waiting for the fittings to show up. I'm just gonna take the different P clamps down. You get everything ready to go there. So we'll get them down. I'm gonna try to do everything in place. And I also want to check the fuel lines because the fuel lines that run next to everything. I just want to make sure those didn't happen to get damaged as well. So I'm going to cut it all down. Excuse me, get it all down and see what I need to cut versus what can stay. And I was looking through the parts. Really, all I have that I can find, because there's still some stuff left in North Carolina, but I did find the boost controller, so that'd be a nice little way to solve it. There's a lot of spider webs under here. I'm kind of creeped out. Yeah, there's a lot of spider web under here. Yeah, but so I did find the boost controller. I found the reverse switch. I did not find. I need to go maybe just to a hardware store. Let's see if this is the right size. There we go. And I think we got away lucky with this one. Oh, nice. It got pressed. It's definitely not happy, but I think it survived. That's really good news. Now, this one, on the other hand, might be another story, but it is pretty banged up. I don't know if I can get the metal bent out of the way enough. Let's see, I might have to cut it with my tin snip. Yeah, we're gonna tin snip it off. Oh, all right, let's get this clamp out of the way. Go. Stinks. So you think you're doing the right thing, using the clamps to keep everything up and safe. That's what I'm changing the lines. I think I even might have got this fuel line here. I gotta check. I don't think I did actually, because I didn't see any fuel leak, but this fuel line also got very close to that dude. I bet it's had. This fuel line also very, very close to a bad time. These are pretty bent, but compressed, but they're not damaged. I think it's just because the I'm worried with the fuel line. That might be an issue for the flow. The return line. And there's a little red spot here. I brought something with us from North Carolina. Alright, so now that this clamp is cut, I can bend it out of the way, get it off. We'll figure out a different way to hold them up here. Might 3D print some kind of holder, so at least when they break, it's not going to damage the lines. Alright, I'll get the camera over here so you guys can see this a little bit better. The fuel line is bent in. Fortunately, that's not as expensive. If I do need to replace it, I don't really want to. I can probably just bend it back in shape, but the coolant line has a full-blown hole on it, so that will definitely cut it at the fittings. And I think everything should be fine. I think this is gonna be a nice little patch and fix repair. I think I can probably figure out something to get these all up, maybe all up at once. We'll see. Shouldn't be too big of a deal. All right, so now it should be a little bit more clear what we got going on here. So the P-clamp actually bent and sliced the line right here. Now what I was talking about, the fuel line, this fuel line here is just deformed. I think I can just kind of bend it back into shape. And then the other coolant line, I think this is actually the return line. That one actually ended up unscathed. These clamps here on the bottom actually bent and sliced into the line. So I thought I was doing the right thing, using clamps to keep everything up and away. And then the clamp ended up being really the problem. I probably could just leave them hanging like this, honestly. All right, so we finally got the new 16 AN line. I know I was gonna try to just splice it in and connect it. It wasn't a great idea anyway, and it really didn't work because I didn't have enough length. So I'm just gonna send it. I'm gonna take off the old fittings. We'll take off the old line altogether, then move the fittings onto my new line. Be nice and easy, should be a lot easier than trying to sneak one in, and we'll have less unions, less points of failure then, so just less likely to have leaks. If you haven't seen it before, I can put a link up in the description, but I'm actually pretty proud of this, honestly. Obviously, this bug came air cooled. So previously, I actually made my own little bracket here to mount the radiator. I made my own radiator shroud to mount the fans, and then even welded on those AN fittings. So all that is in previous footage. If you're a new subscriber, only thing I did in advance is I took out this little extra piece I have, which is actually used just to kind of cover everything and keep the heat away from the battery. You can see I relocated the battery to the trunk there as well for weight, and also to just kind of get it out of the passenger compartment. But nonetheless, I'm going to get these lines off here. It shouldn't be too bad. And then from there, I'm just going to get the fittings off and put them on the new line. And I can now use the old line for my length reference. Let's see. That's tightening. Not too bad. Might be able to pull it out through here. Yeah, let's see. All right, just got one line out here. And I'll go to the other end to get the other piece out. The other piece was even more interesting. It'll be a little hard to see now that it's in place, but I welded the 16 AN fitting directly to the coolant crossover from the Subaru piece. So it'll be a little hard to see because it's tucked in the engine bay when we get back there, but we'll go ahead. We'll do the same thing, disconnect, pull the line out, however, and then we'll use the existing line as a rough estimate for the new piece. I did take out a small section. I tried to fit in that union, so I'll just need to account for that when I make the new length there. All right, so more or less the same thing on this end here. I did plan in advance to kind of make this easier to take on and off, so I do have some quick release clips, and I'll just take this engine cover all the way off and kind of put it aside while we work. I think I have enough room to open up. I'm also trying out these new little lights here from Amazon. Only 20 bucks for the pair. And they work pretty well. They've been good lighting for me to see because it's kind of dark in here. But also really good for the sake of for filming, I think. We'll see. Let's see. So I only have one wire, well, two wires here, but one connection, and it's for the tail light. Excuse me, for the license plate light. So I'm just gonna pull that connection out. And then disconnect my quick release pins here. I think I just got these on like SIP or one of the common Volkswagen parts dealers. Probably gonna forget that's there later. It's gonna still be a little tricky for one person sometimes. I had a technique before. It usually involves bouncing with my head. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Of course, they say use your head, right? There we go. All right. Cool. All right, so I'm not going to bother trying to take you guys around to see this, but the Subaru, you can imagine this is where the front of the engine usually would be, and usually the coolant, I guess you'd say the coolant return, would come out the top here and come out towards the front of the Subaru. Now, because I have this in a Beetle, I actually flipped this around, so the return where I have my AN line welded on is actually underneath. So it's going to be hard to film and show you guys. I'm just going to get it out there real quick. Other things I'm looking around, I mean, I started this project about 5 years ago. Starting to make some thoughts about maybe turbo placement, turbo size, intercooler. Intercooler is not really doing much. It's an air-to-air intercooler kind of stuffed up there. So let me know what you guys think about things. I'd like to upgrade this. I mean, at some point when the truck's up and running, this might go full race car. So let me know what you guys think. I would really like some opinions on where I could kind of change things up here. I'm definitely gonna keep it relatively as it is, but things like the intercooler, turbo was like just a cheap VH. It was supposed to be like a VF48 equivalent, like a nice stock STI equivalent. Starting to rust the cartridge on it is. So let me know what you guys think. I'm totally up for trying some upgrades there. I'm gonna dive under here. Use one of these filming lights just help me see a little bit better. All right. That's actually all there was to it. We get the two lines off now. I can make my new one to length. I'll take the fittings off. So I'll just remove my two fittings and put it on the new line there. All right, so from here, I'm gonna take the fittings off the old line here. I've just cut in half. I'm gonna measure the length, factoring just that little bit I took out while I was trying to make that union piece. And then it should just be getting it all back in and then just burping the system. These are a little tricky to get off. Usually I'd put them in my vise. I only have one soft tool as well, one aluminum one. These are all aluminum fittings, so generally you want to try to use an aluminum tool or something softer than aluminum so you don't mar up the fittings. Something over here though, you know, that It's not what we're going to do, obviously. We're just going to use whatever we got here. Do our best not to destroy them. These aren't the PTFE style, so they're actually a little bit easier to work with. That's not big enough. They're actually a little bit easier to work with because they don't have that extra, I forget what it's called, olive or acorn, the extra little compression fitting that's on the inside there when you have that aluminum sleeve, the PTFE sleeve. Let me grab my vise. I think the vise will be easier to maybe hold this in place here. Again, this would not be a vise if you're trying to keep these in nice shape, but just going to do my best to not let it slide, and hopefully that'll be good enough. So the line's spinning a little bit, which is making it a little more tricky, but I have to do it this way to let the line kind of hang. It's because it's already pressed in there, so the line's actually spinning with the fitting. Let's see. This is better than trying to do it all under the car anyways. I was trying to be quick. And like we all probably aware, haste makes waste, trying to do it the quick way. All that ended up doing was slow me down from ordering the full line. And here we are, still doing it again anyway. So, yeah. I'd like to put in a hard line into having the soft line under the car. I'd like to get some suggestions, but if you think of like factory cars, like say Porsches or like an MR2, I believe they use hard lines from the front radiator to the rear motor. Something I'd like to look into, maybe putting some hard lines along the like outer channels, if you will, or like almost where the steps are. What do you call those? The sills. So yeah, I might try to do hard line. Like there's pros and cons to that too. Hard line will have a little bit more of a cooling effect, I'd imagine, as the air passes under the car. But if a hard line were to get crushed, it has its own problems there too. The soft line, ideally it would have just flexed and came back if that P clamp hadn't pinched it. The hard line, if you were to crush it, it would technically potentially kink that or block it off. So there's more considerations to make. I almost got this off here. There we go. Cool. So keep this for my next length. Oops. It's just one of my filming lights here. Not too bad. I can't even touch that up with like a Sharpie. I'm worried about how it looks. All right, we'll do the same thing on the other one here. I gotta mount this vise down. Hopefully once we settle in another week or two, I can get the garage kind of finalized and get my cabinet here that has all my like specialty tools, like my brake flaring tool, all those tools that you get in like the plastic hard kits. I have all those in my cabinet still back in North Carolina, so I can get all those out here. My bearing presses, so the bead roller, tube bender, So one more trip, we'll get that all out here, and then the garage will be finalized. But in the meantime, still got all the tools I need to do this. We'll get to it before we go to North Carolina. I'd like to get the seat mounted in the truck. Once the seat's mounted in the truck, then I can get the steering column aligned, get the steering column, get the steering shaft. And then actually it's all, should be pretty quick from there. Steering column gets in, do my shift linkage. With the shift linkage, I can make sure the transmission all works. I don't see any reasons why it shouldn't. It's a C6 with our 460 big blocks. It's pretty tried and true combination. Haven't had a chance to mess around with the transmission yet too much. Yeah, the truck is very close as well. It all kind of revolves around that seat, getting the seat and the steering column in, so I can get everything else fitted up. Because if you haven't seen the truck series, I'll put a link up above. But our 62 is going from the 3 on the tree manual to an automatic. So I'm going to use a new steering column. Sorry, it looks like we cut out there, but what I was saying is, as far as the truck, which isn't really what we're working on today, but as far as the truck, new steering column, get the linkage in, make sure all the transmission works. Should be able to be driving that in the next couple of weeks. Is once I can get my head down, really focus on it. I really want to make sure the bug isn't down and out. So trying to do this quick fix here to make sure this is consistently drivable. And then we'll get right into the truck. But the last thing I want is for both the cars to be down. So this is the easiest one to get up and running just because it was only the coolant line. And then it'll be the truck next. So we got the fittings off. All I'm going to do now is compare the original line, cut my new line to length. I'm hoping it might be just the full 15 feet. That'd be the perfect situation because that's what I purchased. Just looking by eye here, it looks more like 12 or so, but we'll see. We'll measure it up and take it from there. So I'll be right back once I have all the hose and everything back in here. All right, so I was having a pretty hard time measuring on this one. So what I decided is I took the old sections of line and I taped it to my new piece to get a rough measurement here. I'm going to double check it as best as I can, add maybe a ½ inch or so, maybe an inch of extra fluff there. I'll cut it to length, put the 2 fittings on, and get it right back in place. I might put 1 fitting on only, just so I can snake it through the P-clamps that still remain there. I'll kind of decide that as I go. The fittings aren't too hard to get on when the hose isn't crushed, as we saw under the car. So it really shouldn't be a big deal in either location. I prefer to get the fittings on first, but I'm going to see how tricky some of those P-clamps are going to be to work with. So first things first is getting this thing kind of equal length to what we originally had, and then I'll go about actually cutting it. So let me grab, there's also a little small section that I cut out when I, a small section I cut out when I originally tried to fit in that little union piece in the middle. Might as well grab it just for reference. Pretty good sized piece actually. Make sure that is accounted for, I guess. Let's see, I just taped them together. Actually, grab my tape so I can mark that end section. Then I'll cut it with my angle grinder. Let me see where that tape is. Here we go. Just use electrical tape for all this. Makes it nice and easy. And again, it keeps all from fraying. Right, so new piece is on the bottom here for me. Okay. There you go. Cut the glove immediately. Yeah, I'm pretty good with that. I'm gonna add maybe an inch or so on just for safety, and then we'll cut it to length. There's absolutely nothing that ripped almost immediately there. I wasn't really putting the glove on because anything was sharp or necessarily dirty. It just seemed like there's a little bit of oil, maybe from manufacturing or whatever from the line itself. This would be it. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get that first fitting on here. Just gonna trim back some of the frays. This is from the initial cut from Summit. I'm hoping we don't have to. Looks like actually I might have to cut this clean. You know what? I'll do this the right way. I'll cut it clean. I will cut it clean. Where is that tape? Tried to cut that back as little as I could. Um, just to hopefully leave enough, as much length as possible here. So now I'm sliding the threaded part of the fitting onto the line, which is one of the usually the more difficult tasks here. I'm trying to think. I guess I'll maybe just wear my welding gloves. I like to wear some gloves while I do this, but you guys know how I am. Or you all, I should say, know how I am. Here we go. And the goal is to get this all the way in so it bottoms out. And then we put the other piece in. Where is my other piece for this one? Put the other piece in. We simply thread it together. So just about all the way in as far as this initial fitting. All right, that seems all the way bottomed. Maybe just a hair more. All right, and from there, put on our other fitting. Oh my goodness, much easier than trying to do this in another car before. So I like to do this as much as I can by hand, which might not be very much on this one. And then I got a vise for the rest of it. kind of do this loose so I don't mar it up too much, but at the same time, don't really care because I'd rather the fitting be tight and look nice. We'll try our best not to damage it too much. Right. Let's get this fitting up here. All right, so we got the length figured out here, and I'm actually glad I double checked it because in the end, I'm about 4 inches longer than where I originally marked. Just between routing, probably some differences in that, mostly how I actually hung it there. So I'm glad I marked it. I'm glad I didn't cut it short initially because I would have ended up been enough length short that probably wouldn't have worked. So whatever, I'm going to cut it now at my new marking with my new tape piece. I'll add in my final fitting. And then from here, it's just bleeding. Now it's quite a bit of coolant to fill it up because we do have these large, about 1 inch lines going from the front to the back. And then we're also going to go through burping the whole system, making sure there's no leaks. And I think before we take it out for a drive, I will still add in my manual boost controller. Might as well have a little fun with this from all the hard work. So we'll add in the manual boost controller. And that first spin, we'll be checking for overheating. And we'll try to turn up the boost a little bit. The most PSI I think this has ever read is about 9 or 10 pounds. And I'd like to be at about double that. I want to see this thing really scream. And that's going to take some more boost pressure. So we'll get everything figured out with the coolant, with reliability, and then we'll get that manual boost controller installed there. So all that we'll try to get done in the next day or so before we get this video out on a Friday. So we'll see how it works out. All right, so let's go. We're going to cut this to length and get that fitting added on. And people have different approaches for how they trim or get these lines to fit up. For me personally, I like to use the electric tape approach. We actually electric tape the line so it avoids fraying. You've probably seen me do that with a couple of them already here. I mean, it's just to help with fraying, so the fitting goes on a little bit easier when that time comes. I'm gonna do a quick cut and try to set my lighting a little bit better here. And we'll go ahead and send it. Oh, hey now. All right. Make sure I get any of that residue out from the cutting. Gum up the lines or anything. Gum up the water pump. I've never had any issues, but I can imagine this. If you leave that rubber in there or let any of that rubber get back, it's not gonna get into the. Hopefully, you wouldn't get to say into like bearings or things like that. But even your water pump, uh, even your thermostat could get gummed up there with that rubber, and that'd just be less than ideal. So I always do at least try to clean it out a little bit. Actually, did not really do a good job on the other end there, so we might actually flush this out. This will be a little bit trickier because we're still going to try to do this in situ, if you will, kind of installed. Shouldn't be as bad though because actually no good reason. Just hope it's not going to be as bad here. So we'll go ahead. Let's get this threaded piece on here. That actually went on nice and easy, at least. That's a win on itself. Actually feels pretty good. All right. Try to get this on a little bit hand tightened to start there. Nice and easy. Cool. And then after a little hand tightening, just like that, I'm going to put that in our vise. It's pretty late here. It's getting later in the evening, so I think what I'll do is I kind of get things buttoned up for tonight, get all the fittings in place, get all the lines on. And then what I'll do tomorrow is I'll go run and get my coolant. I have one of those kind of extended funnels so you can get a little bit higher to burp things. I'll show you guys the whole coolant process here. It can be a little tricky with the front radiator. As if any of you have a rear mount radiator and a front engine car, you can probably relate. People do that with drift cars, with off-road vehicles. So we'll show our bleeding burping process. Might not be the best, but the couple times we've done it, it's always worked out for us. So I'll at least share that if anyone's interested. All right. Cool. Cool. All right, so now I'm just going to pull the coolant line up from underneath here. That shouldn't be too bad. It's a little tricky in this location just because of kind of close. Some of these are routed. And there we go. Pop that right on there. That doesn't sound great, that noise. Cool. I can actually give this a little nice little yoink down. So you're righty tighty. Doesn't really take much with these. And I did weld it, so I'm not gonna push it too much there. And we'll get the other ones, as I mentioned, it's kind of hard to film, but make sure everything's tight on the back end. We have two reservoirs. We have a reservoir on each side, so we'll probably start by topping those off. I have an old line on the other one I'm going to correct too, but this is really the bulk of the work here. I'm not going to bother putting the shroud or that filler piece back in until we know everything's good to go. Everything's kind of filled up and no issues with the system, no leaks or anything there. So again, get back to this tomorrow. I'll show you guys the burping, the bleeding setup there. And from there, we should be taking it out on the road very, very soon. Hopefully, within a couple hours after bleeding it, we'll burp the system, we'll let it get hot, let the fans run, let the thermostat open, let it cool off again. Maybe do that 2 or 3 cycles, and then we should be good to drive. It doesn't really take too much of this. I haven't personally had too many issues. It's always a little bit of a struggle, but nothing too terrible. So hopefully should remain the same going forward here. I don't really have these really strapped down to anything. I might also check in on how my fan lines are secured here, how my fan wiring is. All right, so it's a new day today. We got a couple things done off camera and we're pretty much ready to get the coolant in the system. So went around and just spanner checked everything. I opened up any of my caps. That's my front reservoir, if you will. And then in the back, kind of the same thing, did my spanner checks. I replaced one hose that came with the reservoir that was kind of weak. I don't think it was really made for heat, if you will. And then I have my little filler system here. You've probably seen these. I'll put the link on Amazon, but this just allows us to have a higher bleed point than anything else. Should allow for all the air bubbles to come up and out. And if you look very closely, you'll notice a new piece of the puzzle here. So I have my manual boost controller. I figured now is a great time to install it, so I got that in there. All you really do is you put the boost control in my configuration. There's just a single line that goes from the compressor of the turbo to the internal wastegate, and all we do is put the boost controller there in line there. So now I can essentially adjust how much boost that the wastegate sees, and essentially make the the wastegate open later after seeing more boost going through that little bleed valve, if you will. So should be able to turn it up a little bit, and it should be quite a bit of fun from here. So again, get everything cracked open. We got our little filler system here. So now the last thing I'm going to do is probably start to fill up the system without anything running, just to see if we have any leaks, particularly where those new two fittings have been placed. And then from there, I should be able to get the car running, get it up to temperature, fill the system, and go through a little bit of a bleeding process. I'm explaining it now because probably when it starts, when I actually get running, it might be a little hard to hear in here, but I figured at least I can explain what I'm doing, and then you'll see it as we go through. So I'm going to actually start filling up really from back here until I start seeing fluid in the front, and assuming that we don't have any leaks, then I'll go about starting the car up. But I figured might as well get some fluid in the system to start, because we have plenty of bleed points and kind of breaking points where we can let the air out. All right, so here we go. All right, so we're gonna start by adding some coolant in some different places. I want to get the reservoirs. This back one, it's always kind of the first one we do here. This is when it actually heats up and spreads over, I guess you'd say. So fill that up and check it as the process goes on. All right, that's all I'll do for that one there. I think I'll actually start by getting some more in here as well. Again, just to check for leaks before we actually kick it off. Well, I know that's the right setup here. Let's see it. Might not even have enough coolant. I grabbed 2 gallons. I'll top the rest off with water if needed. I really wish I started with water in case we find out we have a leak here, but let's see how it goes. Doesn't look like anything's coming out of the fitting back here. Just great news. Nothing coming out there. Let's go check the front. I doubt we have anything up here yet, but keep going. Seems to go to nowhere because there's just so much that goes in the system. Still no drips or leaks on this end. No fluid seen yet here. My goal is hopefully by filling there, I can push all the air bubble out to that front reservoir and then just burp the system like you would any other one. Worked before. Let's see if it works this time around. Pretty windy day out, which is actually good in these circumstances. Helps blow the exhaust away. Ooh. Let's see, I'm hearing some burping and bubbling. Nothing from the back still. Awesome. Nothing to the front yet. That's not a big deal. Keep filling. There's gonna be quite a few air bubbles just because the long system, it completely drained out. It's almost 1 gallon fully spent. Nothing up to the front yet. All right. 1 gallon fully spent. Got a lid on that. Everyone, especially those of you with pets, always be careful of coolant. Something about it makes it taste sweet. Something I have to ask my wife. She's the kind of something to do with glycol or glucose or something along those lines. But coolant tastes sweet, and it's very, very common for animals to get into. So just be cautious when you recycle that stuff, when you wasted it. Obviously, if you don't have animals, you should still be cautious, but particularly if you're like me, dogs come to the garage, you just want to be really careful about that stuff because, like my father would say, you don't want to turn a good time into a bad time. All right, keep going here. And there's a potential we could run into an airlock or something that might cause us troubles bleeding, but right now, I think actually we just don't have enough fluid in the system yet. Let's see. I think it is filling up. Unfortunately, without the car running, the thermostat and the water pump will probably be a little bit of a peak point, I guess you'd say. A little bit of a bottleneck for the water to get through. It's not running, the thermostat's not open. We'll get there when we get there. There's no rush this time around. I'll kind of burping its way out already. I don't know if you can hear. I'll get a little closer to the mic. A little more head pressure and some more fluid. All right, we get some coolant up here in the front now. I don't think this is going to be enough, honestly. I might have to add another bottle of water or something to it, which is fine. But this is getting pretty full up here. So we might have some airlock, some bubble there. Again, you always need to run it and everything too to just burp the system, let it heat up, cool down. I'm just trying to see as much as we can get in here without a mess while the car is still not even running. Makes it nice and easy for us. You can fill it up as much as possible without the car shaking, running, bouncing around, filling up the garage with exhaust. All right, we are getting fluid up here. We are getting fluid up here, it looks like. So once this really starts to fill up, I can probably just add to this end. And I want to make sure I'm pushing that air out to one direction. At least that's from my experience. It helps. Try to push on one direction, almost like a gravity feed, back feeding it here. I'm trying to get all the coolant, in this instance, push all the air out towards that radiator. We're about a gallon and a half in here. I think a stock Subaru takes like 1 3/4. So I was hoping that last little quarter of a gallon was all I'd need to fill up my hose. Oh yeah, we're getting fluid up here. Cool, cool, cool. And I don't see any leaks. I don't see any fluids. There's a little bit of sweat maybe on my end. Let me check how the camera's looking here. Right in my armpit. Cool. Looks like we're doing well here, guys. Oh, bubbling up. Who knows? I might get lucky on this one. Burping might be nice and simple. I don't get ahead of myself, but I'm really excited to try out that boost controller. I think I mentioned this before, but I think the most we've seen is about 7 to 10 psi. The boost control is raised up to 30. Now I'm never going to go that high on this setup. Everything's more or less stock other than my cams. As far as stock 2 Subaru, we have stock pistons, stock connecting rods. It's really not too much. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. All right, we're almost filled up actually. We might get lucky on this one. 2 gallons might be exactly what it takes. That front reservoir is almost filled. And obviously we're gonna run it and burp it, but everything might work out all right here. Burp a little. Still no fluids on the ground, which, I mean, it's great news. That could always change once the car warms up. These things start to heat up and expand. And just do a touch test if I can get to it from here. I might have to go from underneath. I don't think anything's dripping. It doesn't look wet. No. Fantastic. That's actually really good news. A little worried. Just doing these is always a little tricky, and I got my own welds and fittings to rely on there, so dry. Nice. So it can always be a little stressful. See, this front reservoir is just about full. Now, what I did before, it actually has a little hole in the top here. I think that's all I'm going to do. I think if I fill this anymore, I think that's all I want to do. If I fill it anymore, it's going to turn into a mess here. Let's see, it's kind of low on that side. Nice. It's going to work out just fine. So, snap a roosty. Now the top of that has a little screw where I can actually burp just a little pinhole on the top, but I don't have any sealant or anything with me now, so I don't think that's good enough. It was starting to actually start fill up over it, so I think that's exactly what we want there. All right, I think I'm gonna actually get into running in here. It's got all the fluids in it. I'll put that little extra funnel piece here to give us some more head pressure, is what you call it, give us some more fluid on the top there. And that'll force the bubbles up where the air is going to rise. This actually looks really, really promising. At the same time, I'm also going to have the computer set up on the inside, because if we're going to get it up and running up to temperature, might as well take the time to adjust the tune a little bit, because I did change some parameters as far as the tune itself, but never actually let the auto tune or the VE analyze do its thing. So I've only put the numbers in. I haven't actually really confirmed that we're getting the fueling or whatever we need per those values. I think that's what I'm gonna get going at the same time. We'll get the computer up and running. I'll probably bring you guys into the car so you can really see that a little bit. And then it's just gonna be the bleeding process. We get the car up to temperature, try to make sure all the bubbles out, then usually let the cool car down. Maybe do that a second time, check for coolant levels. That should be good to go. I'm actually pretty content with how this has worked out so far. Now, nothing is perfect by any means, but at least we're moving in that right direction. All right, we'll check back in a minute. All right, so first thing I'm gonna do is get that funnel piece back on here, and then we'll get the car running again. All right. I guess the only way to check it is, might as well add some coolant in now and make sure it holds. No, I'm gonna fire it up. Then the car's gonna shake, and it happened to me once before. It shook it right off the thing. So we'll open the garage up here. All right, so everything actually went really smooth with this. No real leaks, which is great news. Did have a little bit of an air pocket, it seemed like, because we were getting up to about 208 or so. Once I cracked that little can at the front to let the air pocket out, it seemed like everything cooled off right away, went down to about 190 or so, which is what we're looking for. I don't know if I showed this or not yet, but we also added in this manual boost controller, which means we're going to have a chance to actually turn up the boost and really see how this bad boy can run. Now, one thing I did notice, and I'm not actually sure how long this was a problem, but as I was running and letting things idle here, my blow-off valve has actually been open. It has a little vent, and I'm actually using this as a vent to atmosphere because I'm using my Mega Squirt. I can tune based off of air pressure rather than air flow, if you will. So I don't need this to vent or what do you call it? Recirculate. I can vent to atmosphere, but mine's actually venting to atmosphere all the time. I'm going to take this out in a moment, but for some reason, air is constantly coming out of it. So that also could be why I'm having trouble getting any positive pressure, getting any boost. I think the most boost I've gotten is like 7 or 8 pounds. And I'm wondering if maybe something got into the blow-off valve at some point and lodged it open. I do have actually a really nice GFB, a Go Fast Bits. That's an Australian company. I think I'm just going to throw it in here instead. I had it just sitting around. It didn't fit on a previous Subaru project. I'm pretty sure it is going to fit on this one. So I think I'm going to take what I have in here out, probably take it apart a little bit to see if I can fix it, either to keep as a backup or to resell. And most likely I'll just get my my GFB one in here if it fits. So the next thing I'm going to do, and then we'll be able to actually take this out on a ride. I don't know how much I'll do with the boost quite yet. I think this will be a pretty casual ride to start, just to make sure we're not overheating, we don't have any coolant leaks, so on and so forth. All right, so we'll get that thing out of here. And I'll probably just check it to see what's wrong, but like I said, I have another blow-off valve, so I should be able to just switch it up. I think it's for the right size. There's a couple different ones for different years of WRX and STI, but I think, pretty sure, I hope, this is the right one. If not, we'll get this one fixed up if needed. Let's see. Nice and simple. Only 2 bolts there. And to be honest with you, it might be working right. This is a stock. It's not really a blow-off valve. I guess technically it's a I forget the term, a back pressure valve or something. So it might actually function correctly to be open at idle if it was circulating, but that's not how I'm doing mine here. Like I mentioned before, I can blow off to atmosphere because I'm using MAP, not MAF readings here. I'm actually doing speed density. So I'd like to get rid of any of those leaks. Could potentially be giving me issues with the my throttle response with some surging. So I'm gonna try here, and hopefully that's all I need. Let's see, just need to get this perfect. So cool. This is GFB, so Go Fast Bits. It's an Australian brand. This I think this current one may be discontinued. Let me see. So this is actually an adjustment for the spring pressure, also for the sound, so you can have it recirculate or blow off to atmosphere. You can see it's actually fully to atmosphere, but you could potentially go to recirc and then blow off back into your intake pipe. It's actually a pretty cool one here. Like I said, I had it for a previous project. It was actually going to be a Impreza RS that I was going to turbo swap, kind of do an NA. Pretty much what I did to this. That's what all the parts were for a previous Impreza naturally aspirated build. I was going to do that, never kind of came to be. I hope this O-ring is still in good shape. We're going to try it here. Looks nice. It looks cool, which is the most important thing, of course. Let's see. There we go. Ah, that's what stopped me before. Okay. So I remember I didn't install it. It's because you can get to that bolt. I didn't realize you can just take this off. I mean, go figure. So difficult. Sometimes it's like the smallest things that can stop me. And sometimes I think it just let it stop me. That's for another time. Let's see. Ooh, this looks cool. Looks a little bit more race car, which is always fun. It's O-ring, so I shouldn't have to ever worry about gaskets there, which is also just nice. I might have to get a new O-ring if it's leaking at all, but nice. Cool. So it is the right size, right location, and everything. Perfect, because I gotta be honest, I wasn't 100% sure. Like I said, there's different intercoolers and different Subaru models, so like that. It's just really tight in here, so hopefully I can get everything. I'm gonna get an extension. Nice. Full blow off. The little guy on here again. No problem. Hit the harder. This thing off if I need to. It's hitting the hardware. Okay. Yeah, it's not the end of the world. All right, so I need a new. So maybe these aren't the bolts that it came with, or that were factory, but it's a little horn piece of it's hitting the hardware. I'm just gonna leave it off for now because it's not huge. It's definitely gonna help to make sure nothing. Actually, I don't even know. This might just be for sound, to be honest with you. It looks like it might help to make sure nothing accidentally gets sucked in there, almost like a little filter. So I will look for an Allen head bolt or something of the same size. But for now, that's fine. Where's my hose? Should be right back in that same location. Nice. It has a little adjustable. Oh, that's so easy. The location of the vacuum port is actually adjustable, so you can rotate it as needed there. Cool, cool. I'm gonna get some hose clamps. I'm definitely low on them across the board. All right, sweet. So blow off valve, boost controller. I gotta get that tightened down. I need clamps for everything there. But I think we're ready to fire back up. What time is it? It's not too late. I might wait till the morning. So just so everyone knows, I'm actually currently in an MBA program, a Master's in Business Administration. So that's why I've been posting a little bit less. I've been a little bit more busy lately because I've actually been in school taking online classes. And I might have to finish my homework tonight and get back to this in the morning. I'm going to try to get this video out this week. So might just take a break from it for a couple minutes here. Kind of celebrate an easy success as far as the blow-off valve goes. That was actually surprisingly easy. I need to get some types of clamps across the board here. I'm missing a lot of hose clamps because most of the hoses were tight fits, but all right, we'll get back to you guys soon. All right, so this next day here, it's gonna be a fresh start. Figured I'd want you guys all be part of this with me. It might not be as loud as you might imagine because I got the mic on me and I'm sitting in the car here, but let's see how it sounds in car at least. All right. And so this is one thing I'm noticing here is my AFR is not really reading in Megasquirt, but you can see I am getting a reading up on my gauge. So I do need to check that, see what's going on between those two. I'm not going to take it for a drive today. I'd like to get this video out to y'all, but I definitely fixed the problem with the blow-off valve. It's not leaking. See, the coolant's getting up to about 186, 190 or so, but the fans are running, so I should expect that to start cooling down. I'm going to pull out of the driveway so I can start organizing and actually start getting into the truck because we finally finished the move from North Carolina. The house did close, so I need to get things cleaned up here so I can start working on my cars again. All right, so I didn't realize how much the mic ruined the audio on that. So I'm going to do another start and idle and some revs just without the mic to hear it a little better. All right, so that's really everything we have for this one today. I was hoping to do a little bit more driving with the bug, but to be honest, it just took a little bit longer than I expected to get everything back together. And there's some fine tuning I want to do on the tune before I really get it out on the road again. Between changing the blow off valve, adding that manual boost control, I just want to check in the tune before I really get in on it. But from there, in our next video, we're going to get that out on the road. We're going to test that manual boost controller, try to turn up the boost a little bit. And I did just recently purchase a draggy, so I will install the draggy in the next video, which installation is pretty simple there. And we can start getting some 1/8 mile, quarter mile, maybe even 60-foot times. Now, nothing crazy. This is not meant to be a race car by any means quite yet, but it will be cool to kind of see what we have gotten out of that turbo Subaru saw in such a lightweight little bug there. Now, the big deal is actually I want to get back into the truck. So the goal here is in our next video really to start working back on the truck again, get the seat in, steering column, and hopefully, we're at least moving it around in the garage and the driveway and starting to test out some of those systems. I would love to get it on the road by the end of the year here. So really, we're going to start turning our focus to the truck while still providing some content on the bug now that's driving it. That was my whole goal, to get the bug back on the road so we have a driving project while we can work on this at the same time. All right, so that's everything we have for this one. If you like what you saw, hit the like button. Be sure to subscribe for more content, share with your friends. Hope to see you again soon.